Good morning. You're tuned into Aluta Continua here on CKCU 93.1 FM. I'm Monique. Coming up on today's program, I'll be speaking with two filmmakers whose short films will be screened next week at the 8th Annual Ottawa Canadian Film Festival, also known as OCAN. And that is David Randall with his film Triage and Amir Zargara, A Good Day Will Come. Good morning, Amir, and good morning, David. Thanks for joining me here on Aluta Continua.
Good to be here.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Let's start by sharing a synopsis of your films. Amir, let's start with you. Your film is A Good Day Will Come.
Yeah, my film is about an Iranian wrestler who has to decide if he's going to stand up the oppressive regime and face the consequences of his actions, or he's going to keep his head down and keep wrestling and keep providing for his family and essentially have no honor. Inspired by a real person, Navid Afkari, who was executed by the Iranian regime 4 years ago.
And David, your film is Triage.
Yeah, I'm just going to read the synopsis here. For Gemma and James, a simple car ride to the vet escalates into a full-blown crisis, exposing hard truths beneath the surface of their relationship. Set in the early days of the pandemic, Triage is a claustrophobic pressure cooker, an exploration of who we truly love when our worlds fall apart.
David, I want to follow up on that synopsis that you've just provided. Where did the idea for the film come from?
I actually hadn't realized that part of it was this story I'd heard from this woman. I don't want to give away, I'd give away the film if I spoke about it too much, but just about some of the dangers around cats. You know what I'm talking about from seeing the film. I just don't want to give it away to the listeners yet. But there's a certain thing that poisons cats that I had a conversation with this woman about, and that was many years before I even started to write this. But it came from in the pandemic, moving to from Toronto to Prince Edward County, part of the mass exodus of Torontonians. So part of it was moving to a new small town. Part of it was taking we have two cats, one of our cats to the vet, and then a disagreement starting to happen about my wife being like, of course, we do anything, we pay anything, whatever it costs to take care of our animal, who we love, and I love my animals very much. But I also kind of, had some disagreements about like, well, we should figure out how much this is and, how much, we're going to sink into this and how old our cats are. So it kind of was just about this tension in the midst of a tiny argument that we had while waiting a long time, because there was triage systems and people waiting in their cars outside of vets in the pandemic with masks and closed windows. It made me feel like this sense of this like potential like great conflict between this couple about their what's more compassionate, what's more bigger picture, what's more empathy. And then the last thing was also just the pandemic itself, which I mentioned, which was just the pressures that it put on relationships, these greater forces that were kind of pressuring relationships, and some of them coming apart, seeing with friends, pressures in my own relationship, and then just trying to explore humanizing characters who are dealing with like immense systemic pressures that are outside of their control, or perhaps like that they've encountered before, because none of us were prepared for what we had to go through in the pandemic and being cooped up together. Yeah, so.
The actors are spot on in this film. What was the casting process like for you?
Yeah, the casting process was, I mean, we went union. We shot this union, which created a little bit of like financial hurdles, but we went with the best talent that we could and didn't want to close the pool. I'm speaking we, like myself and my producer, Simon Reynolds, who's a veteran actor who worked in the industry for 30 years. And yeah, we did on casting workbook and put the call out. We got 300 submissions. There were like 36 auditions between the two leads. There were some peripheral characters we cast just locally in Picton, but those two actors were from Toronto. And yeah, they hands down gave very unique, what I felt was like the best auditions. The other actors brought very unique things to it, but I thought just for this, it felt like it was right. But it wasn't even the characters I had written. It was like new, it was different, and it was like better.
Amir, in regards to your film, why did you choose to tell this particular story? Because I could imagine, given the topic that you're exploring, which is basically the political situation in Iran and many of the protests that take place there over the years. And I think in particular, you're looking at the protests in this film that took place maybe in 2000 and is it 18?
Between 2018 and 2021, just that whole.
Right. So no doubt, Amir, there are lots of stories that you could have told. Why did you choose to tell this particular story about this wrestler, Navid Afkari?
Yeah, the look, I was trying not to tell the story for the longest time. The I didn't think it was my place. I didn't think I was the best person to tell the story. There are better filmmakers than me in the Iranian community who live outside of Iran, because that's a whole other thing. If you live in Iran, you can't tell the story. And then I waited a few years, and I waited for them to tell it. And once I saw that like nothing was happening, and after dealing with my moral dilemmas of like, gosh, like what could this mean for the family, or should I go docudrama or fiction, and what could it mean for my family, and dealing with all those things internally, and talking to people back home about how to navigate those waters. Essentially, my why came down to this, which is like, okay, like Navid, he was born in 93. I was born in 93. He's born in Shiraz. I'm born in Ahwaz, a few hours apart. Uh, and essentially again, like I used to wrestle growing up, like he wrestled growing up. So the, and then in grade nine, I moved to Canada, and, and he didn't, right? So and again, in Canada, we have the privilege of to make whatever films we want. There's no permits required to like, I don't need to get approval on a script uh, or on a cut or like on like where I want to show the film. Like these are three different permit levels that you need in Iran. So and yeah, it came down to that essentially, which is like okay, like it's like okay, if I don't use the privilege that I've gained to be in Canada to tell the story, and I waited a few years and no one's already telling the story. And then like what does that say about me, and there's a scene in the film which is like the character Arash is like looking in the mirror at himself, and that's like me, because he's got to decide in that moment. It comes down to honor essentially, which is, do you have honor or not? And then it came down to that for me, and why him specifically is because like wrestling is such a big part of the Iranian culture and heritage, and it's uh it's like the people we look up to as Iranians are like as these like mythical figures also like in our poetry we're also wrestlers, and yeah, so it's just ingrained within the culture.
One of the things, Amir, that I thought was very interesting about your film was the connection between art, sports, and politics. I think we often look at art and politics as something that we're very, I wouldn't say comfortable with, but it's something that we know oftentimes can go together. And sports not nec is not it's not necessarily the case all the time with sports, although we do see it. And I just wanted to ask you about your thoughts between the connection between sports and politics.
Yeah, unfortunately it's super political back home because it's not about who's the best. Like it just happened during the Massa Amini protest a few years ago as the national team was going to represent Iran at the FIFA World Cup, and some of the best players are not on the team. It's because they've spoken against the regime. So I guess that's the thing about national sports and representing your country, and this flag on your chest that's not it might not relate to you as this is the regime's flag, so like because they changed the flag once they got in power after the revolution. So it's a very, and again for Iranians, especially the diaspora, it's a very it's a dilemma because you want to root for your people, but then these are handpicked by the regime for a reason, and then also like they have the flag up. We might not relate to that flag. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very it's just all gray, and that's why it's like it becomes again like politics is all gray, and as soon as you mix that with anything, with sports, with arts, with religion, the it taints those things, you know. And yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but it is what it is.
One of the questions I had for both of you was about the location of where the films were made. And maybe, David, we'll start with you. It's always nice to see Canadian landscapes in the background, places that we're familiar with. And as the couple is driving along, I want to say it's a highway or somewhere in Ontario. It looks familiar, which is really nice. Where was the film made?
We screened it here in Picton. It's such a small community, so they immediately recognized all the landscapes and they loved seeing their towns represented on screen. But came from Toronto. This weird process of acclimation where it's like in layers because it was like in the pandemic I came here. So it's like I didn't get a sense of the community until after I got a sense of the landscape. And because we had our bubbles and stuff. But yeah, I guess like a film crew is a little like a bubble, film cast and crew. But it was just kind of like a way of exploring, in the location scouting, the landscapes. And I was telling Amir this story, which was quite fortuitous, which is that the production was scheduled for a certain time of the year, and then we pushed it back several months, and it just happened to coincide with when a bridge was being repaired on this road called County Road 4, which is Bengill Road. And for $15 a day, we were able to like get access to this full road because it was closed like on either side only to local traffic. And we also had our lead actor, Colin Platt, also Hannah Forrest Brand does some driving too, but it wasn't like they were being pulled. The cars were being pulled. The actors were actually driving. So we needed that extra layer of safety. So it was just really great. We lucked out because I don't know how we would have done it had we not been able to access a closed road that was still close to the production base. Yeah, so a lot of it is this Bengill Road. Another part of it is this road leading up to Bengill Road called Old Belleville Road, where you see all that dappled light kind of cut through the trees, just kind of like tree tunnel. So that gave us some really nice light. And then there was also this vet in a plaza. Um, it was a little confusing, like on our production day, because there were actually two vets in the plaza, and we got mixed up where we were shooting. So it was kind of funny. But we ended up getting this other location in this plaza in Rossmore, which is like on the way to Belleville from Prince Edward County. So it was those three locations.
And Amir, I must admit, given the topic of your film, I was a little bit weary for you and nervous for you to think, where was this film made? Because I was thinking I can't imagine you making this film in Iran.
I mean, it would have been nice for sure, but yeah, we shot the film in Istanbul, Turkey, double for Iran, and and prior to ending up there, we did look at six other countries that have double for Iran and have product and had conversations with production companies in those countries, and it just came down to budget essentially, and then also our producer on the ground in Turkey, the after I had a conversation with him, who established filmmaker back home, also connected us. It felt right, and yeah, excited to work with them again in the coming months as well on another project.
David, when we think about the pandemic and how a lot of us were impacted, do you think that some of those feelings, some of those experiences are still resonating with people now in terms of their current experience, or are we post-pandemic and what happened in the pandemic now is the past and it's no longer impacting people?
I think it's like any kind of history. It's like traces of it are living in you, and it's there. And sometimes art kind of shakes it loose, and you remember that it's there. And sometimes we're just functioning with things in the background. But I think a lot of what a lot of filmmakers can do is they can say like, hey, this still has another angle to look at. This still has another bit of um, thing we could learn from it, or so um, yeah, it's a really interesting question.
Amir, I think it would be fair to say that this film is critical of the Iranian regime. What does this mean for you as an Iranian going back to Iran? Does this complicate, does making this film complicate that?
Uh, yeah, and that's a good point. That is a critical of the Iranian regime. It's the and whether the film is political or social and all these things. I would say again, it's just it's about the character, you know what I'm saying, and the journey of the character and the obstacles they have to overcome. That's how I would word it. But and I see the film more as social versus political. But again, that's just my personal view on things. But yeah, absolutely it does. And that was another moral qualm I have to deal with. It's not just about me going back. It's about my family, extended family, uh, so yeah, definitely like it's not smart for me to go back anytime soon. Yeah, especially as the film gets more notoriety.
And Amir, I think you are right. It would be fair to say, I think, or more rather, it would be more accurate to say that I don't think your film does critique the regime, but rather your film tells the story of someone that was impacted at one of these protests and rather just telling a story. There's something on your website that I thought connected both of your films really nicely, Amir, and that was that I think both your films address quote unquote, again taken directly from your statement, Amir, moral complexities faced by individuals. And as I'm listening to both of you talk about your projects, I'm also seeing another connection, which is how your personal experience also impacted not just the work, but the making of the work, the decision to make the work.
Yeah, I love that connection you drew. Well, I mean, I think I don't know. It seemed just what I'm hearing for Amir too, and this is what for me it was just like it was vital to make it. It was something that was such a part of my reality that uh, I needed to respond to it, and there's a lot of energy there and fuel to commit to a project for long term if it's that vital to you. But another thing is if it's so much a part of your life, it can be very challenging to make something that you're living in. In a way, like I needed to be outside of the pandemic while in the pandemic to look at things, to survive my own relationship, and to have empathy for myself, my partner, people, other people's relationships. Yeah, and it is this interplay between like what is an empathic response to what's happening or to your partner in a moment where you're dealing with these other forces and that kind of gray area and the complexities around that as well. And I love and I and it felt like there was more ambiguity that happened as I went on in making the film, but like I feel like I was also fueled by those kind of questions and making like that's something that looked a certain way could actually have this other element to it.
Yeah, moral complexity. Yeah, I mean, that's all I want to make films about. Those are all the just yeah, like moral complexity, moral dilemmas, gray areas. It's so putting the audience in the part of the character so that they feel for them and not judge them. These are all the things that I aim to do. Uh, Sometimes I succeed, sometimes not so much, but um, and Dave does that greatly as well in his film, Triage. And yeah, I mean, I again, the short film format is tough, especially like when I'm so focused on a specific character, and telling Arash's story in this case, and I'm not able to. I try to have moments, to put the audience in the shoes of the commander at the protest to be like, well, he's in between a hard and a rock place, as well, and that's just how everybody is, you know. But I don't get to explore it as much, and that's why I'm excited for the longer format version, hopefully, to be able to get into all those and show how much more morally complex it is and gray and
So finally, for folks who may attend the festival and see your films, if you could sum it up in, let's say, just a sentence, what would you like them to take away from your film? David, let's start with you.
Well, I can't say for sure what they'll take away. Hopefully, it'll be just, maybe not just a reflection of the pandemic because that's when it was made and it has references to that. But hopefully, it will be a reflection for them of what they went through, a place to maybe process some of that, but also just, in any kind of complexity in conflict about, locating empathy within that, or understanding of the humanity of somebody within a situation, and remembering, I don't know, like just going on a bit of the journey to kind of, see another layer of something, I think. I don't want to be too specific about what somebody takes away. So I was trying to be as general as possible. But yeah, hopefully there's something there for everybody.
What they should take away, yeah, to keep it short and simple, is that the Iranian people and the Iranian regime are two separate things. And within the people, there are people on the side of the regime, and there are people against the regime, and everything in between.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Monique. Good to see you, Amir.
That was filmmakers Amir Zargara and David Randall. Their films A Good Day Will Come and Triage will be screening next week on Saturday, November 8th at the Bytown as part of a program of shorts at the Ottawa Canadian Film Festival. For more information, check out the film festival's website at ocanfilmfest.ca. Thank you for joining us this morning, and please take time to 1, support OCAN, and 2, CKCU by donating to our funding drive at ckcufm.com. That's it for this edition of Aluta Continua. I'm Monique, signing off until next week.